Hey guys, for episode 206, we're talking about paint polishing procedure and specifically the one pad, one polish technique. Now, I will say that I'm letting the video go long. This is a longer episode with Kevin because the things he's saying are not only eye-opening, but they really help the paint or keep your paint safe, meaning they don't jeopardize the integrity of the clear coat with this technique. So, with that being said, we also use the one pad, one polish in an upcoming episode with Matt Farah on his Countach. So it's not just like classroom, oh, let's write stuff on the board. It's real world. And when that video comes out, I'll post a link up here. So let me just summarize a little bit of what's going on because I think it's so important after all these episodes to kind of sort of bring it home, so to speak. So when you think of paint polishing, it's kind of, I'm using this word a little bit weird. It's like black magic. There's always this weird challenge of figuring out how to make the paint perfect. We're saying in this sort of series here, okay, there's ways to make the paint perfect, but not necessarily bang and destroy it and hit it with a bazooka kind of thing. We're focusing more on this preservation, meaning what's the visual impact? I want the car to look great, but at the same time, we want to do the least amount of damage to it possible. So that's sort of thought process number one. Number two is what are the techniques or the approach when you're just walking up to the car for the first time? Okay, what am I going to do to this car? In that process, it's sort of fascinating of figuring out whether it's going to work or not. And oh, is this liquid working? Oh no, throw that. Is that pad? Oh, that pad didn't do exactly what I wanted immediately. Throw that away. Is this machine working? In that process of figuring it out, you are grinding down the paint to figure out to make the paint perfect. It's sort of like, it doesn't make any sense. So because of all that, we were sitting and I was talking to Kevin saying, how do we get around this? What's the best approach? Because it's sort of like holding water in your hand. It's very hard to hold it. There's no like, do it this step and do it that step. With all that in mind, we came up with this process of the one pad, one polish. And in essence, I'm also saying one pass. It's not really, but it just helps for, to remember. By doing this one pad, one polish, and one pass, you really have 5 variables to deal with instead of hundreds of variables. So pick your favorite pad, whatever it is. Pick your favorite polish, fine. When you're doing, and later in the episode, you see Kevin, he puts the pad down and on a particular speed, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and then he goes one pass. When he's done with that pass, I wipe it off, and he goes back and he looks at it and says, what's happening in the paint? It's telling me a story, what's going on here? And we do 4 different panels, meaning some have deep scratches, meaning lots of stuff's coming off, or some have, soft paint or hard paint or swirls or rotary mark. So we tried to show you a plethora of different examples that you may see in the real world. But what's the point? We're trying to, at the very best we can, to minimize the amount of variables so that you can get a result that you want, but within this preservation mindset. So that's what's really going on in this episode. And the 5 variables are the machine RPM, the pressure and tilt, quantity of liquid, residue control, and wetting agent. Now the first 1 and 2 here, you sort of do by default because you have your comfortable way of usually you work in between 2 and 3 and in this much pressure. Okay, but you can change those based on if the backing plate is rotating. So you may have to boost it up or lower it down, that kind of thing. And of course, the pressure and tilt, the quantity of liquid. You know what? After that one pass, we didn't do a whole lot. So I think we need to do a mow down method in this example, a mow down technique, and just kind of just grind everything away before we can get in and kind of take that top layer surface off. Great. Increase the quantity of liquid. Again, residue control. Everything's coming in, encompassing your pad. Then we have to, you'll see in the video, Kevin turns around and blows the pad out after each pass. We're not suggesting doing one pass each time, blowing out one. I mean, sometimes you may have to on tricky paint. The concept is do one pass, sit back, look at it and say, did this do something to the paint or not? And if it didn't do what you wanted, meaning you're probably gonna have to do more passes most likely. No one is ever really, but if you do get it and it's perfect after one pass, back away. That's the preservation. If it's not, go in and say, what can I change of these 5 variables that will get me where I want to go? And you can slowly go through it without chipping away at the paint and throwing away the bottles and the pads or whatever. I hope that concept comes through because after all these episodes, that is a huge, massive, I don't even say concept or technique. It's just so much bigger than that. But basically, even I on camera, I'm having like aha moments when I was sitting with Kevin. So I'm going to let him talk because it's a privilege to hear all this. And if it lasts 20 minutes, it is what it is. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode. It's really, maybe take some notes or concentrate and go back and watch or whatever, or test it and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna have this innate fear when I walk up to a car like, man, what am I gonna do to make this thing look perfect? You sort of have a little bit of a roadmap for you to go through without going completely nuts and pulling your hair out kind of thing. Just stick to these 5 variables in this sort of technique, and I think you'll have a much better approach and keep the paint safe. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Episode 206 is finally here. How to remove scratches, the old way of polishing versus the new way of polishing. So talk a little bit about the differences between the two, meaning the way that you've done it in the past and sort of this new, not more modern, but more efficient or effective way of doing it.
We're very strategic in what we do. So we're simplifying our options. We're using one pad, one liquid, one machine.
Right.
And we're really diagnosing as we work. We're doing tests, one-way passes. Everything's one, right?
Right. And so in the past, what were you doing?
We would get some of the bucket loaded compound and dab some on there and start to buff and work it, and you could see through it, and it would be dusty and there'd be wool everywhere, but you would work and maybe just shoot around and find your defects. Really, not saying that it wasn't the right way, but we've become more advanced now. So we have to be, we're cutting rapidly.
Right.
If we do too much of that stuff, the paints are thinner, we can get into a lot of trouble if we're pointing and shooting and just kind of guessing and not being very specific.
Right. So with the technology advances, with the product advances, with the pad and the tool advances, we've sort of narrowed it down. So our thing that we're going to keep fixed, right, is the procedure. One pad, one polish, right?
Correct.
That's not going to change. The only variables that we will manipulate based on these panels that we have here, which was from the episode 202, where we have the DA haze, rotary swirls, pigtails, and scratches. Basically, all the things that you're going to encounter, so to speak, on your
Sure,
on your paint
we're really
normal
going
life.
for varying depths of scratch or quantity.
Right.
And we can replicate that through these systems right here.
Right.
Yeah,
So if we keep the one pad, one polish mentality, we have 5 variables that we can change, and we do them pretty quick, even though there's 5 of them. So we have machine RPM, our arm speed, meaning you're going to do your test panel, and as you can see, if the pad isn't rotating,
if it's chattering, hopping, bouncing, or
you're going to need
still.
to change your speed.
Sure.
A little bit here, a little bit faster, a little bit slower, whatever the pad or the paint is telling you.
And that's rotary or DA.
Right.
So either one, they're going to chatter, hop, bounce, or not go smoothly. So you bump up until you get that.
Same idea with the arm speed.
Yes.
So if you go ahead.
If you see some clumping and you say, well, I've got plenty of polish and I know it's clean, but it's clumping, I'm smooth, you can increase your arm speed to help spread that out.
Right. Number 2 would be tilt or pressure of the machine. You can lean down, give it a little more.
Yeah, mainly if you're on curved panels and
Right.
such, and you want to plant that pad or get it to conform better, it's rather than just pressing down and just brute force, sometimes you can just add a little bit of tilt, and that causes the pad to remove part of the pad, and the rest of it fits much better.
Right.
In this case, I don't anticipate having to do that too much.
Because we're on flat panels.
We can do such a small amount of motion with this large stroke machine. It really digs every time it orbits.
Right.
So.
The quantity of liquid we can, shock and awe,
Yep,
tons of
shock
product.
and awe, massive quantity. That does a couple of things. It increases the quantity of abrasive that we're using and the fluidity. So
Right.
as we're removing the paint residue, and it encompasses the pad and the liquid, it keeps it more suspended and doesn't stop the
bog the whole
speed
thing down.
of cut.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then if you want to refine, you lessen or you
Sure.
remove a little bit of that
We're going
quantity
to
of
take
liquid.
that same exact pad and we're going to blow it out
Right.
thoroughly, and that's going to fluff up the strings, take away the clumps and the residue, and basically make that as refined as we can get it to do our final pass.
Again, all with one pad and one polish. This is the kind of exciting part, the thing that I really wanted to, the culmination of all the other episodes
Yep.
was for me was this. So again, the one pad, one polish. Okay, we did machine speed, tilt, quantity of liquid, residue control. We've talked about that at length, but basically as the paint is coming off, as the sawdust, as we said a
Right.
bunch of times, is coming off and embedding in the pad, you're gonna have to regulate that variable, meaning if it's, let's say, harder paint and it's not coming off as much, maybe you don't have to blow it out as much. If you have really soft paint or it's coming off a lot, you may have to blow it out even more. So
And if you don't have the ability to thoroughly clean it out that way, then have your pads ready.
Right.
Instead of having
Switch
one
pads.
pad, have another pad or another pad. It's not a problem to have a few pads ready to go.
Absolutely. And the last one is the supplemental wetting agent.
Yeah, supplemental wetting agent is simply a product we spray onto the surface, and it creates a drag. So if you have a lot of buffing liquid in the pad, but it's all connected to the pad and absorbed into the pad. Spray, go right over it, it pulls it back out.
Right. So again, these 5 things, and I think 3 or 4 of them get done in 2 seconds.
Sure.
And then the rest of it is kind of sort of manipulating those 1 or 2
the
other
first 2 are just almost you just do it automatically. You
Right.
can feel it, it's by feel, and then you look at it, okay, it looks good, go.
So I think in other words, as we were doing this whole thing and over the years, we've sort of whittled it down to kind of, one of the episodes was too many, or one of the subsections of one of the episodes was too many products, too many things, everybody's looking around. If this doesn't work, throw that one out. I mean, even I'm like, I lose my breath and I say, this is like way too much, it's way too confusing.
And you're very good at, whittling it down to say, well, yeah, we talked about these 5 things, but they all fit into this category.
Before we get into, let's geek out a little bit.
Oh, great.
Here we go, get my light. This thing needs a little bit more light, so I'm using a pen here.
This one is the scratches.
Yep, scratches.
Varying depths. Look at that bright white thick one. That's very deep. We would probably anticipate we're not going to get that one out, but we'll try to minimize the visual impact. And that's what we're really trying to do, is we're not necessarily trying to eliminate all of the scratches, but if we can't see them, that's what we want.
Right, and then notice the jagged edges. So like when we do that scratch, can I do a scratch on the, right there?
Yeah, it's bouncy, it's chattering, hopping. It literally just took pieces out. It wasn't just a smooth.
When I do the example of the scratch like this, it's hard because I have 2 of my hands.
We're
it's
looking
actually
at it
gouged,
here, right?
like here.
And we're taking it and saying, oh, it looks like a V now.
Right, but because I only have 2 hands, but it's actually jagged.
It's jagged.
In between
exactly.
that V.
It's like an ice pick.
There you go, and that's what I was trying to prove with this, if you look really closely.
So our goal on that scratch is not to eliminate it, because we might go through the clear coat, is to get rid of that jagged look so that light reflects back more accurately. If we can't see it, for all intents and purposes, not there for what we're going for, which is the visual impact of it, or minimizing the visual impact.
Yeah, and saving the paint.
Exactly.
Doing the right thing by the car.
That's right.
All right, so the pigtails, these are kind of fun. Let's find some.
Pigtail is a common thing you'll see, especially if you've had repainted on a panel or something like that. It's common that you'll use a sanding disc to sand the imperfections or smooth out the paint, and sometimes you'll see a consistent pattern that mimics the machine motion. In this case, it's a dual action or random orbital, so lots of little tiny circular scratches.
Right.
And they're, for the most part, fairly close to the same depth. There is a couple of them that are exceptionally deep. That would have been where a piece of the paint residue stuck to the disc, and then it got drug around for a moment, and then broken apart and pulverized. So that one, because there's so much scratching, even though they're not that deep, I anticipate this panel taking quite a bit of time to get that out of there.
Got it. Now we have rotary swirls or holograms over here. Let's see if we can get a good one.
Which is caused by either a wool pad or a foam pad, and it just, again, mimics the motion of the machine. With a rotary, if you're sitting flat, if we say this was a rotary, if you're sitting flat, you can anticipate that the circle is going to be nice and big. But if you tilt, which we do a lot with a rotary, you're now going to have longer string marks or scratches. So,
and you would say, in terms of depth, where are we here?
We're still not as bad as the random scratches, but I think that one's going to take a little time too, because there's a large quantity. Look at that. Yeah,
that's kind of neat.
You can see how they actually are in a circular or a rotating pattern, but when you just look at it at one point, it looks like they're just straight.
Right. All right, and then we have over here DA haze.
That is caused by, and it's very common. You get your random orbital polisher, you do your cut, you do your finish, and sometimes you say, well, all the heavy defects are gone, but it just looks kind of milky. It's because those scratches are in abundance and they're very shallow. So it kind of masks, in this case, the metallic particulate, and doesn't give you the depth of gloss or color. And I don't think that one's going to take too long to get out.
Okay. All right, so now that we've got our little nerd session going out here, let's talk about the scratches. How are you going to prepare? Tell me about the machine. You have a 21 large stroke machine.
I do.
You have a microfiber pad on there.
That's right.
And
we're
one
going
polish.
to use
Again,
the
one
polish
pad,
that was engineered to remove paint slowly. So microfiber, we're going to prime it because the strings really have an ability to hold the polish in place. So we're just going to spread it ahead of time, and that's that. So we've got that primed or seasoned.
Right.
And now we're going to add a couple of drops like we have in past episodes. And then if I need more, I'll add more. If I feel that I've still got good working time with that, but it's stuck to the pad. I'll use my supplemental wetting agent and just keep working it.
All right, show me the one pass. Again,
Okay.
you're thinking right now as you're putting down, hey, is the pad rotating? Do I have the right speed on the machine?
Right?
And do I have the right arm speed? You're doing that as a detailer within
Momentarily. Yeah.
2 seconds. So you're
Right.
you're knocking 2 or 3 of the variables out
Sure.
in under a second. So I see you're getting rotation for sure.
Plenty of rotation.
You actually knocked it down in speed.
Didn't need that higher speed.
So you can go up or you can go down. In
That's
this
right.
case, you went down. You did one pass. Let's get a nice clean
and
towel.
you can see the pattern is pretty consistent, but you know, I stayed in place, and as I moved, it caused this kind of thing to happen. So
Right.
you can judge that by looking at the pattern, right?
Interesting.
If I see the pattern really skinny up, I know that, hey, maybe I better back away and get a different, you know, hold of the machine.
All right, so what is this one pass telling you?
Well, what it's telling us is it's going to tell us how quickly it has removed the defects. And then I can then look at this and gauge, well, that got quite a bit out. I'll do another pass, and I'll do maybe one more. And if it looks satisfactory, I'm done. Then I know in general I can do, you know, one back and forth pass or two and get the 99% of what I want done. And at that point, if I want to go around each panel of the car and strategically look for deeper defects and work those, I can do that. But
Right.
we're leaving the maximum amount of paint using a minimum amount of time.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're under the premise of like, hey, we're trying to save as much paint on the car as humanly possible. We're trying to preserve it. We're trying to make it look better. But I think ultimately a lot of people, and it's kind of shocking to say on camera, we're not always trying to go out and just hammer all the scratches and do that. You kind of, it's like 9 lives. You only get a few lives of the paint. And if you get scratches all the time, let's say, and then you take them out all the time, eventually it's gone.
Right. We truly are. We do not. Our goal is not to remove the defect. It's to minimize the visual impact of the defect.
Right.
The mindset shift.
Yeah, that's massive. So this episode was my favorite one to write with you because we really did one pad, one polish, and the mindset. I think a lot of
Right.
people at home, after the 5th or 6th episode, they're going, okay, I see what the strategy is that they're trying to go for. So well, you want to do another, what was the plan? We were going to do all.
We're gonna just see how much time each one takes to.
All right, so the pigtail is why you're getting prepped here.
I'm gonna do a brief blowout.
Yep, let me move this.
Get rid of that paint residue so that I'm not affecting the rate of cut.
So again, he's blowing out the pad, residue control. That's the variable that we were talking about. But again, these two are, here, I stole your.
Thank you.
These two get done really fast. Then you have the quantity of liquid depending on how bad it is. And of course, residue control, which is blowing out the pad.
Okay.
So we have a clean pad, now we're going on pigtails. Pigtails, as you mentioned before, a little bit deeper, potentially harder to get out.
And keep in mind that if you have a heavily oxidized, we're not going after oxidation, but if your paint is heavily oxidized,
Right.
it's going to affect the
Right,
rate
and
of,
we couldn't replicate that here because
Sure.
these are painted panels. We're doing the best we can. We
Right.
put a strip down the middle because we're going to show you before and afters, of course.
So you may
but-
have to bump the speed up a little bit. In that case, we can go very low speed and get the rotation we need.
Got it. So what speed are you at?
2.5.
2.5. All right, so with one pass, yeah, there's definitely more work that needs to get done for sure.
I anticipated that.
But the one pass does look better than the sides over here.
Same pad, prime again. Still plenty of moisture on that pad.
Let me see the pad. Yeah, there we go.
I don't think we added a couple drops last time, but there's enough in here. I don't think we
Yeah.
need to.
One microfiber holds and grabs, so
Sure.
it's hanging on to it.
Next.
Rotary swirls.
Okay, here we go.
Again, the pad is rotating. So I would say there's a significant difference in terms of like how bad it was before to after. There's we probably got 50% of it out on this one, where on the pigtails, because it's a deeper scratch, you got like 20%
We got a
out
lot
there.
of scratches or valleys, and we're going to be knocking off the tops of those rapidly, so you can imagine all that paint's installing into our liquid and onto our pad. When this one isn't nearly as many scratches, so you won't have that same quantity loading the pad and liquid.
Right, DA haze. Wow. Now with DA Hayes, he did the same exact thing. To me, I don't know if you can catch that on camera, but it's almost, I would say it's 80% gone. So this is going to be very easy to get off. So the reason why we did test panels on all 4 of these, because these basically, I don't know, 80–90% encompass what you're normally going to see on a
The
panel.
varying depth of scratches or
Right,
quantities.
right. I'm trying to make the people at home say, like, oh yeah.
To be fair, we do have a polish, so it is doing a little bit of hiding of the defect. You know, we expect that, and we'll check all that.
Right, but the moral of the story is you have different test spots, and they all told the detailer something different. And then with those things that they've told, 1, 2, 3, 4, different, you change these variables.
Sure.
And then you can attack it in a certain way.
Right, and just to add this in there, if you happen to have an entire hood or panel with pigtails, then you're going to do the mow down technique. You're going to put an abundance of liquid.
You're going to increase the
quantity
of liquid.
The smart move is to say, hey, I'm going to take a section and just mow that down for 30 or 60 seconds. I know that I need to do some more passes. Wipe that off, blow your pad out, and just get all of that damage in that general area out of there.
Right.
And then start doing your work progressively like we've talked about.
Right. So I'm going to pick up my machine. I'm going to use a 5-inch. You're going to use a 6-inch.
Okay.
We're going to each attack both of these. And once we finish, we'll come back on and we'll chat on camera. Okay, so we completed our 4 panels that basically represent everything you would find on a normal car on the street or something like that, right?
The depths, the quantity,
Right.
all over the map on these. So.
And we did it all again, 1 pad, 1 liquid.
That's right.
All right, so let's take a look at the before of
the scratches panel. Random scratches, different depths, different quantities.
There we go.
There we go.
See that?
Yep.
All the scratches. And then afterwards,
you're not going to see much because we've managed to get rid of the majority of the defects.
right. That's a little dust right there. Those little dots are dust. All right, so if we go to pigtails.
You're going to have a lot more scratches, but not that deep, kind of consistent.
Right. And then we go over here.
And wow,
Again,
that's
those
a
are
big
just,
difference.
that's dust and little rock chips or whatever. But you're not going to see anything because that's the point. And then we have rotary swirls.
Yeah, if you move that light around, we can see how they actually do change direction. There you go.
And then afterwards,
vastly improved.
Again, you're not going to see anything. That's the idea. And we have DA Hayes. Very common.
Very fine scratches. Just kind of makes it look milky.
Yeah.
Not a lot of clarity on the metallic. Watch the metallic, how it's going to make a big difference in how you see that. There you go.
So the metallic comes out
I see
looking much, much better.
Once in a while I see a little random, probably a towel mark, something like that.
So again, the bottom line is we were doing all these things and keeping something constant, meaning the pad and the polish.
Everything we change is on this sheet.
Right.
Arm speed, quantities.
And the mission was to preserve the paint and not necessarily, like we've said in other episodes, drop your bags and just go at it and pound. It's, again, changing the mindset. So quick recap, with these things staying constant, we have the option to change the variables. We were doing over here, our arm speed changed. Our machine, we turned up the RPMs just to make sure that it was slipping.
That's right.
When it wasn't slipping, we're like, oh, maybe we can kick it up. Or in some cases, we kicked it down at the same time.
That's right.
We have the tilt and the pressure. As we were going on the edge, put a little bit more pressure there, make sure that we're squeegeeing everything on the edge.
Got it.
Quantity of liquid, absolutely did in this particular case on the pigtails.
Initially lots of liquid,
Yeah.
and then progressively backed it down by blowing it out, or if you don't have a compressor, just change the pad.
Absolutely, it goes without saying, residue control.
Continuously.
Right, so when you walk up to a car, part of me is thinking, aside from the topography of the car, which is something I really want to focus on, is how much residue is coming off the car at the same time, how much is your pad absorbing that or retaining that?
Retaining it, controlling it,
Right.
Loading or unloading.
Right, and that percentage means you got to spray it out more or clean it out more.
That's correct.
You don't need to. So keep that in mind. And then of course the last one, your tuner, your supplemental weighting agent, you can increase the cut, decrease the cut. You can kind of play around.
Mat the fibers down.
Right.
Spread product.
Right, so I think this is a really good example to show a 50-50 shot, get an idea of how to remove scratches, but more importantly, I think the concept overall for this episode was the old way of polishing, which isn't necessarily wrong, it's just a different way of polishing,
That's correct.
long cycling, that kind of thing, versus the new way of polishing where you're minimizing your variables, keeping things constant, and then the variables that you are changing are the things that you sort of do anyways.
Yeah, and you're not chasing your tail and trying to figure out what's the best thing the entire time, removing paint that you don't need to.
Right, remember, preserve the paint, that's the goal here. So for our next episode, we are doing everything from 201 all the way through this episode, 206, combining them into one chapter, one series. It's gonna be a long one. A lot of you have asked me, hey Larry, can you shoot an episode with Kevin and just detail the paint on the car? And that's essentially what we're gonna be doing, having conversations, figuring out, hey, why is this panel, we have to, you know, if there's a slope or
sure, how to get things to fit in there.
Right, and like real, again, this is flat. We're doing a demonstration as if you guys were sitting right there in a classroom kind of thing. Now we're saying, okay, come over here, let's do it on an actual car that is.
Sure, different shapes, nothing's flat. It's complicated to get the machine in or the pad to fit, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. As always, guys, if you have any questions, shoot me an email at larry@ammonyc.com. If you want to watch the entire series, visit ammonyc.com, click on the training, and there should be beginner, advanced, all that stuff is going to be there. It's very exciting. You ready for the next episode?
I'm ready.
All right, let's see you. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks. Hey guys, for your free downloadable PDF, visit ammonyc.com, click on training and PDF for your step-by-step guide to each chapter.